Warm blessings, everyone. Master Shaman Palai Chi here today, and today I'm talking to you about life and death. Basically, the dying process and the life after death. This is my part 2 of the other video that I made when I talked about the grieving process and why you shouldn't grieve through, I guess, excessively. Because it will stop the transcending process. But here, talking about when a person is deceased or becomes deceased, what happens to the spirit? Basically, the spirit leaves the body or the vessel, and it is known on a shamanic aspect, at least in my aspect, is it's a soul. And so the soul leaves the body. It is still sort of intact together and has not been dispersed. The reason for the disbursement of the soul is that the soul is made up of various spirits of the soul. And so these different spirits of the soul are sort of still intact. They're still together for a period of time in the middle world. And being in this middle world, they are sort of still confused, still think that they're in the vessel. They're not really sure why they have left the vessel. And it's sort of like in those depictions where the spirit is up here and they're looking at down at their body and they're confused. So basically, that is very true of a depiction, that the spirit of the soul or the soul itself gets very confused at what they can and cannot do as a spirit or soul that is roaming around and thinking that they're still who they are in their vessel. So just know that when a person becomes deceased, they are confused. And not with every person that is deceased or becomes deceased will have this, but most will. And most will be confused or frustrated that they can't do what they have been able to before as a person with a body. So as a soul in a body that is able to touch, feel, and say things to people and the loved ones around them, they're confused and frustrated that they cannot do that any longer. For very few, there is an exception. So for some that become deceased, they may be okay with it, or they may know exactly where they're going. They know, and they're not frustrated, they're not confused, and they just go straight up to the light, like it's depicted sometimes. So the person that becomes deceased may sometimes just go straight to where they need to go. And so they're not wandering in the middle ground or the middle world, and trying to still contact and talk and do the gestures like they were when they were inside of the vessel. So they're outside of the vessel. The spirit of this soul, or the soul itself, is outside of the vessel. The spirit has not been dispersed yet. The second phase that comes through is when it's time for the disbursement. And sometimes when the disbursement happens through this process is soul leaves the vessel, vessel is left there, it's a corpse now, and then the vessel is left there. The soul is then out and about and wondering or frustrated, or they go directly to where they need to go for some. And so the ones that are still wandering in the middle ground or in the middle world, they're trying to send messages. They're trying to come in, and they'll come into your home. This is like right after death. So right after the person has deceased, their spirit or their soul comes right into your home. They'll maybe turn things around in the home. They may touch things. They might, you might hear a creaking door. You may feel their energy around you. You may feel an eerie feeling and feeling like is it them? Is it not? And sometimes it's not them. Sometimes it's not the deceased soul. Okay. Sometimes it's other things that are attached or comes along with that soul. Or it's basically, how can I say this, escorting the soul. And yet they can't do anything yet to this soul, but they can escort it or follow it to places that it goes. And sometimes, if you guys have gotten eerie feelings after you know this loved one that has deceased, and you feel eerie about it, suddenly you just have this feeling in your room or in your home somewhere or just outside somewhere, it may be this other entity that is attached or following the soul to wherever it goes, because it has a tendency to want a part of it and be a part of it. So that's part of that discussion, and that can go into a deeper discussion. The other part is that you may get the spirit or soul of this deceased loved one to visiting you, and or telling you messages about their death, or telling you messages about what's going to happen, or asking you what will happen. They're frustrated, they're confused. And so this, to help you get through your grievance and anxiety over this death that has occurred within the family or your loved one or friends that were close to you and at your heart. This explanation helps you to understand that when you grieve, you're asking it with thought, with feeling, with energy for it to come back. And so by doing that, it sort of lags or hurts the soul of the deceased person to want to come back and communicate, to want to come and visit you. So you're actually allowing it visitation time or visitation setup type of energy that goes around you, and that it's okay for it to hang around. And that is also one reason why on the shamanic aspect of my shaman aspect is that it is not a good thing to do that, so that it can actually be released back to where it needs to go to, so that it can get on with the process. If the soul and you or whoever else is in the family is not as you're still grieving, you're still crying, but if it's not as strong, doesn't mean that you don't love the person or their soul as much, but it's just a knowing of, I understand what is happening with this process. Then this soul is able to transcend and get on to its transition into the next phase where it needs to go to. And in this transcending process, this soul is then able to disperse all of its spirits within the soul. So imagine the body is here and the soul, some say the soul is around the body or the vessel, and some say the soul is within the body or vessel. I say, from what I know and from my teachings of the spirit, the highest ascended masters of the universe, is that the soul is actually inside of the body, and it is held within the body areas, but it is a soul that is inside of the body. It is in the inner body. What you feel on the outside is actually the essence of the soul, the energy of the soul that feels like it's protecting the person. So therefore, the soul is not, the body is not in a soul. The soul is actually in a body or vessel. The feeling that someone just feels like the soul is around is the essence of the soul itself. So I hope that explains some of the things that maybe you were wondering about after the dying process, or after a deceased loved one has passed on, or a loved one has deceased and passed on, where they are descending to. That's going to be in another video of what happens after the disbursement of the soul. Okay, so I hope that this video has helped you to have some kind of a realization or an understanding of what happens after a person is deceased to their soul, and their body is basically left there. So hopefully this will help with some of the grievances, and because I know that when you grieve, You grieve to questions and unanswered questions that you are really in need of an answer to, and there's no one to give you the answer to those questions. So you don't know, and you just cry and cry, and you just miss the person a lot, and just a ton of missing of that person. But there's going to be a time when this understanding comes through. And when they say it takes time, it actually is not the time that releases your grievance or releases the sadness. It is actually the time with the understanding and healing in it. I hope that this makes some sense to you with the transcending process and what happens sort of immediately, or in a certain time frame within the time after your loved one is deceased. I am drawn or called to come out here and talk to you guys about this life after death process, because I know that for some of you it is very hard to understand, especially in the times that we are in right now, of so many that are losing their life at a young age, and then some at the typical older age that we would expect. But then it's still very hard for some of you to really get over this. And it's not, and like I posted the other day on a post in the comments, and I said that yes, it's never easy to get over, and you will never get over for some of you and most of you, but it's more about understanding the process and adjusting to it, to the change that you have to go through when a person is out of your life. And so for some of you, it's very sudden. For some of you, it's sort of like you expected it or it was anticipated. We just never know, right? And this is something of us in this lifetime to learn about life after death, or the life and the living and the dying, I mean. And this life after death knowing or process, so that we can elevate ourselves also to a higher frequency, and we are treating our loved ones that has deceased in a most respectful manner, and to not over grieve if you can help it, is to also be respectful of the transcending process into this loved ones that has deceased, their process, where they're going and where they need to do, what they need to do, where they need to get to, so that you can also live a less karmic life, and so that you can also live a more smoother transition in your life, and changes to the new ways that you'll have to work on or deal with in your physical daily activities. All right. So that's what I want to leave you with. Warm blessings, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.